The Chicago Bears make a bevy of roster moves, including cutting one undrafted free agent I was pretty excited about. We're going to talk a little bit about that. Plus, we're going to talk about the expanded role for DJ Moore in the 2025 season as Declan Doyle talks about that. And an unexpected offensive lineman is making a case to be on the roster and maybe even was the Chicago Bears' best offensive lineman in the first preseason game. We're talking about all that, plus awarding sit to Ben Johnson and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bears Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bears news and content.
What's going on, Bears fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bears Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bears related. I'm the host there, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Chi Bears Central on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go and get into this content for today, y'all. So the Chicago Bears made some roster moves yesterday. In this roster moves, the Chicago Bears have signed defensive backs, 4 defensive backs: Millard Bradford, Mekhi Gardner, Caleb Haize, and Mark Perry, which we already knew. We talked about a couple of days ago. They waived John Jackson and Jonathan Kim, the kicker Jonathan Kim and wide receiver John Jackson. They waived Major Burns as well with the injury designation, which I think still says that the Bears see a lot in Major Burns there. And they also placed defensive back Sean Wade on injured reserve. So there you go on that one. These are moves that just because of all the injuries going on. Major Burns, who actually played very early in the Chicago Bears' first preseason game, but went down with injury and did not return when it comes down to this. And the Bears are just bringing in more defensive backs. You know, that's with Jalen Johnson hurt. We already knew that. Coming in there and the number of injuries that we have in that defensive backfield. And it's important for practice and training camp to have all those defensive backs out there so that Dennis Allen can implement the style of defense that he's planning on calling, during the regular season. And so that's what it is when it comes down to this. I don't think these are anything major as it stands right now. Could it turn into that if these injuries go on and continue? Of course, that's always a possibility, or it's a possibility these guys come in and play much better than what was expected. And then you're left with that as well. So, that we'll see what happens with that for the Chicago Bears, how that ends up going as well. But overall, I don't think it's anything too serious. Jonathan Kim as well. Keep in mind the Bears signed him as a kicker, and a lot of people thought, hey, maybe the Bears are going to have a new kicker here. But yeah, no, Cario Santos, especially with the way that Santos played, in the preseason game and the way that he's kicking, he was going to be here for quite a while. So just some minor roster moves, nothing too major for the Chicago Bears there. But wanted to bring that update. I didn't feel like it was worthy of a breaking news episode yesterday to do a live stream. So wanted to start off the episode with that. But let's get into the actual more Bears stuff. Declan Doyle talked about DJ Moore, and he said this in regards to DJ. Declan Doyle, by the way, our offensive coordinator, for those that don't know, says this: DJ is one of those guys you really love when the ball is in his hands. Just trying to find ways to be creative about how we do that. Trying to get him touches in every way we can. He's a natural, he's very natural back there. He has good vision. It's one of those things that we will test it and mess with it a little bit. We'll see where it goes. We have already heard, we heard that DJ Moore, even maybe lining up as running back sometimes, things like that. Like DJ Moore, I do think this, right? And I don't know if it's going to end up being DJ Moore. I think it could either be DJ, it could be Luther Burden, or it could be Colston Loveland. It could be one of those 3 players, but you're going to see, and maybe a combination of all 3, somebody be a positionless player in a way for the Chicago Bears. You're going to see somebody lined up in very creative ways, not to say that it's going to get gimmicky, but in a way that to try to free them up schematically to do some things. And, I've talked a lot about this summer how the basis of Ben Johnson's offense, rather than just one scheme or not, it's about getting the ball in the hands of your playmakers. And Ben Johnson, Declan Doyle, that's their job to figure this out. And I think what we're hearing from DJ Moore is from Declan Doyle on DJ Moore is just the Bears are being have a concerned effort in finding a way to get that ball in DJ Moore's hands. And I have no reason not to trust them when it comes to that. They're going to find a best way to do that. And DJ Moore talked about it as well. He said this in regards to when he was asked about him lining up in the backfield. He said this: I was just like, go ahead, add it all onto the plate now. Just be an athlete at this point, and I'll have to learn it all. That's what I'm doing. He also said this: I just break it up in different parts. You got a receiver part, the running back part, and then you got the whole concept part. it's daunting, but I get paid the big bucks to do it, so why not? Great mindset to have in that, right? And I think DJ, especially for how frustrated DJ Moore was at times last season, keep in mind he was one of those players that this coaching staff felt the need to talk about his body language going into the season and how important for him to correct that. And so I think that it all just comes together and plays a part into what we're seeing here with the Chicago Bears and how important it is for everybody to get in line and in tune here. So there's going to be, and like I said, it could be a combination of all three of those guys, but there's going to be a lot of positionless football played for the Bears. They first have to get the offensive concepts down. I don't think we're going to see maybe too much of it, especially not early on in the season, and maybe not this season a lot at all. Once the offense is humming, once the offense gets everything together and it gets into that rhythm, as far as we're eliminating some of that pre-snap stuff, we're eliminating some of the rhythm things. Once we do that, you're going to see those extra wrinkles added into the Bears offense. And those wrinkles are going to be lining up DJ Moore as at running back sometimes, Luther Burden sometimes at tight end, Colston Loveland sometimes at the slot receiver. You're going to see a lot of interesting things, but I do think Ben Johnson's first and foremost thing is getting everybody on that same page offensively. Once that happens, then you can take it to the next step, right? And so, we'll see how that's going to work out over time. DJ Moore, he had a career high 14 carries with 10 snaps lined up in the backfield with the Panthers in 2022. So it's not like he's unfamiliar with this. And so, Ben Johnson, and one of the jobs of him being an offensive savant is how he schemes players up, how he gets that to being done. And we'll see what happens there with DJ Moore. But I'm excited for this offense. I know that it hasn't been the best, and I do think there are some cautionary things there with the Chicago Bears offense. And, that gets us to the next step. Lawrence Holmes and Mike Speaks at The Source talked about the Chicago Bears and the offense and the expectations for the Bear offense and said this: it's going to be a while into the season before I'll be willing to throw a gauntlet down saying, "Welp, there it is." I know that everyone else will be upset if things don't go well. I'm kind of expecting this thing to not be quite right until November. Now, if it's great, like that would be great if the Bears are interesting and really good, and Caleb Williams is good for the first 2 months of the season, but I'm kind of expecting the clunkiness to continue in and see how it develops. Now, there's been a lot of talk about that, right? And how when you change a coach, you change a complete scheme, how long is it going to take to that scheme for everything to be operating on a high cylinder? And it's a fair question to ask, right? That is the point of training camp. The point of training camp is to get over as many of those hurdles so that when you start the season, you can hit the ground running. And that's what you hope is going to happen for this Bears team. But, with what we've seen so far, we're already, over, a couple of weeks into training camp, things like that. When you add in mini camps and stuff, like this team has had the playbook. It's had the scheme for a while. Now, we've had injuries on the offensive line. We've had injuries in our weapons. We've had those type of things. But it does not seem like if anybody was hoping that the Bears are going to be a well-oiled machine to start off the season, it's probably not going to happen. And, some of that is understandable, right? To me, and just my personal thought on it is that I pre-snap things, if that ends up really being a thing in the regular season, to me, there's no excuse for that. There's no excuse for that. Now, if you get some people caught out of position in assignments and things like that, but pre-snap stuff, that's something that you have to eliminate in training camp. Is like that's really ideal. You don't want to carry that into the regular season at all. And if the Bears do carry that into the regular season, I'm not gonna lie to you, there's big concerns about that. And so, let's hope that those concerns get mitigated as the preseason goes on and we're still going through practice and training camp and things like that. But it is a rising question now, and more people are raising that question, rightfully so, because we haven't seen it. And while you could talk, no matter how high you are or low on Caleb Williams as a player, again, it's more than just even that. If the offense is that out of sync with pre-snap things, not every pre-snap thing is Caleb Williams, and not to say that none of it is either. Like some of it definitely is, and so I'm sure Ben Johnson this is driving Ben Johnson crazy. From everything that I've heard, seen, and learned about Ben Johnson, I almost would expect Ben Johnson to lose sleep at night over the offense being out of sync and the pre-snap things. And if you're struggling to get lined up correctly, it's very difficult at that point to build that second hand in your offense. Like when you see a quarterback, a play caller, and your weapons all in sync, right? You don't really have pre-snap penalties to do that. You can't do that if you're not lined up correctly. You can't do that if you wanted to become second nature. And that's where the Bears are really going to have to tighten this thing up. Now, I want to be clear here as well. It's not all doom and gloom. This is part of the process. Growing pains are called growing pains for a reason. So I want to be clear there. Where we're at right now, I'm going to chalk it up to part of the process. Now, if we go into the regular season and week one, we're still seeing it to the degree that we've been hearing about it so far, then it's outside of just being part of the process. And that's where it's going to be a huge concern, because it's hard to get those type of things underway in a regular season with you're dealing with adversity, unless throughout pre-snap penalties and things you're winning games. But if you're losing throughout that and going on losing streak, it's very difficult to catch that rhythm again. I'm not going to say it's impossible. That's what bye weeks are for and things like that. But you got to get that offense rolling. And so let me ask you this question. I'm going to throw this to the Chicago Bears fans. Do you expect the Bears offense to start rolling early in the season, or do you trust Ben Johnson and this coaching staff that even if it's not rolling at the start of the season, that they'll do enough to get it rolling by the middle of the season? Let me know what you guys think about that in the offense overall. Let me know that down below. Talking about the offense, though, especially the offensive line and pre-snap things, there was a player that really stood out with the Chicago Bears in the first preseason game when you go back and look at the tape, and that's Theo Benedict. Keep in mind, Theo Benedict was one of the players that was very much a darling throughout Hard Knocks last year. Well, just kind of the first couple episodes of Hard Knocks. He then ended up getting hurt. The Bears retained him to get back in here. We know that we already got a position battle for Braxton Jones, Aji Trapillo. Even Kieran Almagaje isn't reported as being out of that yet, but in hearing Declan Doyle say that somebody has separated themselves, you like to think that. But Theo Benedict is an interesting case to watch here for the Chicago Bears, right? Because keep in mind, the Bears still do have Ryan Bates, who they can cut and get quite a bit of cap relief back for that, and not a lot of his money turned into dead salary. So there is that opportunity. But Theo Benedict played great in the preseason game. When you look at it as well, he played 29 snaps on Sunday. He didn't allow a single pressure, not a single pressure. And then in 13 of those 29 snaps, he was in one-on-one with no help at all. He had one penalty, but outside of that, Theo Benedict put up a damn near flawless performance. That was only one preseason game, but I do think with what we've heard about him so far in preseason and things like that, Theo Benedict is going to make an interesting case, and we'll see where he can. Benedict's a player that can play multiple positions on that offensive line. I do think, they're going to try to narrow that down into one for him. But Theo Benedict, I had him marked as one of the interesting case points for this coming into this season, because if Theo Benedict is ready to perform for you at that tackle position or even playing some guard, it frees you up on what you can do. Depth is a thing that I'm worried about with this offensive line. I feel very confident in the projected starters. The depth is where I have a question at. And so, especially with Braxton Jones and the situation with him and his contract coming up, if Theo Benedict can prove to himself to be a weapon here for the Chicago Bears, that's going to make the question around Braxton even more of a solidified answer. And so, seeing that Benedict have that type of performance is really good. Now, you got to build off of that. Let's see what he does in preseason game 2, and if he can build off of that. But listen, when you look at it, 2024 first rounder Chop Robinson, right, who had 6 sacks as a rookie. When you look at how Theo Benedict performed against him on one-on-one matchups, I tell you what, it may be time to buy stock in Theo Benedict. And there's a reason why the Bears saw what they saw in him last year throughout the preseason period and saw enough to want to make sure that they kept him on the roster despite his injury and gave him another opportunity. And we'll see how that ends up working out. But I implore anyone to go back and watch the one-on-one matchups with Theo Benedict on the offensive line. Go and watch it. You will see an offensive lineman that I'd say this: if Theo Benedict if he can bring even 75% of what he brought in the preseason game in a regular season, he would have been one of our best offensive linemen last year. And that's how good, when you look at it, he still has some things with his stance being a little too wide, but his hand placements are great. His anchor, really good as well, really stood out in that one. I think this guy just and working with Dan Rouchar, you expect some of those things to start being worked on as well, and he can smooth those things out. But Theo Benedict is somebody that I am becoming higher and higher on after watching his tape, and I think that he does have a lot of promise here for the Chicago Bears. But you guys can let me know how you feel on that down below. Let's get into the last topic of the day, right? And this is something that I've talked about in the comment section. I've talked a little bit about with the guys in certain episodes. But one of the questions that's rising here around the Bears is that, is Ben Johnson protecting Caleb Williams from criticism? And it's a common thought. The moment that people heard that Caleb Williams wasn't playing in the first preseason game, oh, Ben Johnson, no, he's not ready, this, all that. And while I could say this, right, I'm somebody that I think standing and agreeance are two very different things. I don't have to agree with you to understand where your point is rooted from. And while I'm going based off what Ben Johnson says, and I'm taking it at face value for now until I see otherwise. But I can't say that I don't understand the people that have the standpoint and have the question of, is Ben Johnson protecting, or the Bears as a whole protecting Caleb Williams? I can understand it. Again, don't agree with it at all, but I can understand where those questions come from. And that's the thing, especially when you hear stuff about the offense not being in sync, especially when you hear things about the offense, for example, the starting offense having a rough day of practice after the game. When you hear all these things, it's a question around there, right? And, we shall see. Now, here's the thing. Nick Wright on The Herd said this. My take is everybody but Tom Brady played this weekend and Caleb Williams didn't, which is not correct. And he said this, he's not quite there. We're asking him to do stuff under center, and it was strategic in not playing him. And now, Colin Cowherd is an idiot. And we know this. He's somebody who has turned into a shock jock in a way. But again, I can't necessarily say that those questions are legitimate. His calls went on to ask this: is Ben Johnson protecting Caleb? Is this Ben Johnson protecting himself? I do think it will be a little rocky early as the transition takes place, but I think by Thanksgiving, Colin, Caleb, I believe, is going to look like the player you and I both believe he would be. So, there you go, some follow-up on it. We've heard a lot of positivity, right? As far as Caleb and Ben Johnson having lunches together in Ben Johnson's office, the relationship there being solid, and that's all great and fine and dandy. You can have a great relationship, but on the field, that doesn't necessarily, yes, a great relationship helps the shorthand on the field. It helps both the coach and your play callers see things the same way or understand how they're seeing things and have that open hand and in that conversation. That's all great. But we cannot deny that one of the reasons and one of the thought processes behind bringing Ben Johnson in here was that he can help develop and get Caleb Williams to the place that we want to be. And it's going to be one of those questions that maintain being around the Chicago Bears, I think, for quite a while. Now, there of course, going to be alarms around every time that Caleb Williams either doesn't do something, doesn't play. It's going to be there when it comes down to it, right? But I think when you look at, for example, The Athletic, they released their quarterback tier rankings, and Caleb Williams ranked at 23 when it came down to it, and talk about the alarming aspect, saying this: he's definitely an A1 talent, the head coach said, but I think it's going to take him longer than Jaden Daniels. He's not playing fast right now. There's something there. His processing to me was alarming watching the tape. And that was based more so off last season, and of course we haven't seen anything this season. But the alarm bells are going to be there for Caleb. And as a Bears community and as a Bears fan base, the Bears fans are going to ring that until we see the proof in the reality. What have I said throughout the offseason? This is a show me season for the Bears. And that was more so about the Bears as a whole, less than just Caleb Williams. That's just me being a jaded Bears fan at this point. I've seen so much really good talk in the offseason that has not developed into really anything during the regular season in the same level that it was talked about before the season started. So that's just my own natural trepidation about the Bears. That's always going to be there for me every single year. It's going to be there in the offseason. But here's the thing, right? I think that you see a lot of people talk about it, even when they talk about Caleb's, they do talk as well about that they do see it coming. A random GM was polled in regards to Caleb Williams, said this: I think that will come in time. Maybe it's a little bit like Josh Allen early in his career, where he has so much good other stuff that you will live with some of the negative plays. As he gets more snaps under his belt, that part will come. And so, I remember being, the reactions when I told people last season after we drafted Caleb, that Caleb was going to have a normal rookie season with normal rookie hurdles. And people were like, well, if he's generational, he needs to be generational from day one. I remember it was literally the first preseason game where somebody left the comments like, I'm not seeing generational out there. You guys, it's like, again, like you got to understand what buzzwords are used by media and then how actual football is done. But to go back on all of this, like I said, I can understand where the concern is rooted from. Completely understand. At the point, I don't agree with some of the more harsh reactions yet. I don't agree with it yet. Now, I could very much turn it and get on that page when the Bears starters play this Sunday in preseason and they go out there, and if Caleb Williams looks like absolute shit, best believe I'm going to be fucking concerned. It's not going to be no more in theory. I'm going to be out there concerned. So, we'll see what happens here. And it could be more of a slower process for the offense overall. But the question, to get back to the topic, is Ben Johnson protecting Caleb? None of us know that for sure. But that answer, once Caleb was on the field, is going to be very loud one way or another. And all we can do is wait and see what that's going to happen. And we shall see how that all shakes out. But let me know down below, what do you guys think? Do you think Ben Johnson and the Chicago Bears are protecting Caleb Williams at all with the way they've handled things? Let me know that down below. Make sure you guys are following us at Chi Bears Central. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, ChicagoBearsCentral@gmail.com. Lastly, if you guys want to leave a text message and or voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-242-9336. We are the #1 spot for everything Chicago Bears related, but that's thanks to you, lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, Chi-Town up, but Bear down. Love you guys. Peace, y'all.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.